So the question today is, how do you co-parent if you have a narcissistic ex? And it's something that a lot of people struggle with, a lot of people are Googling and checking into. And it's important to start, though, by realizing that narcissistic personality disorder is actually a clinical diagnosis that somebody like a psychiatrist needs to make. And in many cases, this subject is being searched on the internet by people who have no idea whether their ex has ever been clinically diagnosed. And I bet you a lot of those exes, they may be manipulative, they may be bad people, they may be controlling, and they may have other issues, but I bet the majority of them are not actually true narcissists. And again, only a qualified professional can really diagnose that. That's not me, it's probably not you. But we can still deal with the symptoms of what that looks like and how it affects you and your kids. We're getting into all of that today in this video. Hi, I'm Jeff Campbell from DivorcedParentsClub.com, and I'm on a mission to help parents just like you and me, and singles as well, who have struggled with divorce, and especially if there are kids involved. How do you move forward from that in a way that does the least amount of damage to you, your ex, and your kids? So we're talking about narcissistic exes today in this video. So first, how do you tell if your ex is a narcissist, or at least has some of those tendencies? After all, that word's thrown around a lot, but what does it really mean? And again, I'm not qualified to diagnose, and you're probably not either, but there are some commonalities that we can look for in their behavior to kind of give us clues as to whether or not they could be a narcissist, and whether they are or aren't, we're not going to really ever know if they ever get diagnosed for that, probably, since they're now our ex. But we can recognize some of those signs and figure out how to work around it in the best way possible for the sake of our kids. So first of all, know that they're probably going to blame you a lot for anything that goes wrong. They're not going to take real ownership of their behavior. They don't really recognize that their behavior is as bad as everybody else sees that it is. But they're going to blame you for a lot of it. They're going to turn it around on you. They may engage in what has become popular on the internet called gaslighting, where they kind of make you end up believing that you're kind of crazy for thinking these things are going on with them. And it's really just a form of manipulation, but look for that for sure. The next thing is you're going to catch them in lies. They may be obvious lies, they may be big lies, they might be little lies, but you're going to start to realize that they're not being honest with you. They may also badmouth you to the kids when the kids are with them, and they may even try and turn the kids against you. I was talking to my mechanic yesterday, who unfortunately has a toxic ex who has actually moved out of state with his daughter and has cut off all contact whatsoever. Of course, that's not really legal, but my friend would actually have to go to court and fight and get an attorney and pay a lot of money to kind of battle this. And he doesn't really have that at the moment. And he's been dealing with this toxic ex for a decade at this point. Really unfortunate. But just look for them to turn the kids against you or constantly be bad-mouthing you to the kids. Something you definitely don't want to do in return. And ultimately, just know that this person thrives on chaos. They thrive on drama. That's probably what they were used to in their childhood, and it's familiar. And they may not like it, they may claim to not like it, but because it's familiar, they're drawn to that behavior, and they will always invent or create situations to fuel that drama and that chaos, something you ideally don't want to be a part of, at least as much as humanly possible when co-parenting with them. So how do narcissists treat their kids? That's an important question because you love your kids. That's why you're watching this video. And it's not, if they're a true narcissist, in other words, if they truly have narcissistic personality disorder, they can't really love in the same way that you and I can. But what does it look like? How do they treat the kids? What kind of things can you expect to see when the kids come back from being with them? Let's review those now. First of all, they're going to be very possessive, very controlling. They're going to use emotional abuse, most likely in not physical abuse, but they're going to use emotional abuse, manipulation, guilt tripping. They can't really love, like I mentioned a minute ago, but they may dole out affection, what feels like love to the kids, but only in exchange for getting something in return, some sort of condition. Otherwise, they don't give their love and their affection. A great example of this, you have kids, so you may have seen the movie Tangled, the Disney movie. Mother Gothel is a prime example of a narcissistic mother in how she treats Rapunzel. Of course, she's not truly Rapunzel's birth mother, as we know if you've seen the movie, but the way that she treats her is classic narcissism. You'll also notice that they're extremely inflexible. They want what they want when they want it, without regard to anything else. You and I both know as parents, we have to check that at the door. My schedule, my needs always get put on the back burner for the sake of my kids. If I was my way or the highway, my life would be frantic and chaotic, and my kids would not really be close to me, and I wouldn't really be close to them. So look for that kind of thing in this situation. If your ex is totally inflexible and very rigid, that's another clear sign of a possible narcissist. And again, in no cases take one of these examples as meaning it's a possibility. Look for multiple examples of that. And again, I'm not qualified to diagnose that. You aren't either. But whether they're diagnosed or not, if you're seeing a lot of these signs, there are some things that you can do to deal with that better and to protect your kids. We'll be getting into all of that a little bit later in the video. But for right now, if you like this video, if you find it helpful, please hit that subscribe button and the like button. That way more parents just like you and I get notified of future videos that I put out. But let's keep going. So let's say that you're convinced that your ex is a narcissist, or at least an extremely toxic person that is actually bad for your kids, and you're wanting to actually get them away from them. Let's say that the court, gave them at least partial custody, if not 50-50, and you just want to get them away to protect your kids. I get it. I get that mama and papa bear instinct to protect our kids at all costs. It's just complicated when your ex has been given custody by the courts. So there are a lot of things that you've got to do, and there's a number of things you don't want to do to make sure that you don't end up in hot water or even in jail in some cases by doing the wrong thing, even though your instincts are good. So the first thing I'm going to recommend is that you talk to your lawyer. And if you don't have one, or if you didn't use one when you got divorced, or maybe you never were married in the first place, but you do have some sort of court agreement, talk to an attorney who can guide you through this process. You also need to know that your word isn't going to mean anything to a judge. You've got to have evidence to back up what you're asserting, what you're claiming. Now, in some cases, if the kids have direct exposure to these behaviors and are willing to testify, and they're old enough to testify, I wouldn't put like a 4-year-old through something like that, but teenagers, yeah, they could actually go to court and explain to the judge exactly the kinds of things that have been happening. If there's more than one child and they're both old enough to do that, that's even better, because that does add a layer of credibility. It could still be a little he said, she said, without any actual evidence. And whether or not you want to go to the degree of, like secretly recording things on phones and things like that, I don't know. I'm not necessarily recommending that. I am recommending that you talk to an attorney first, and just to kind of see what your options are. And then it's really important, as I kind of alluded to earlier, that make sure you're not violating any court-ordered agreements. In other words, if your ex was given custody, partial or half, make sure you're not preventing them from seeing the kids. That could actually land you up in jail, and you don't want that. Your goal is to protect these kids, and you can't do that if you're actually in custody. And then lastly, when you're talking with your kids, let's say they're coming to you after being on a visit, maybe with their dad, for instance, and they're talking to you, they're venting. Let them vent, let them talk, let them come to you and express everything that they're feeling. Avoid the urge to bash your ex back to the kids. I don't want you to do that, even if your ex is doing that with regard to you. You don't want to go there. You want to stay above board. You want to be the good parent, the solid parent, the consistent parent. Let your kids vent though. Let them know that they can talk to you about anything. and that it's a safe place for them to say whatever is on their minds. Also reassure them, let them know that this is not their fault, and just give them that safe place to feel comfortable talking to you about it. And then again, if they're giving you some really interesting information that could be used in a court, then make sure your lawyer is aware of those things too. And then the last thing I want to talk about today is what happens when these kids who have a narcissistic parent or a would-be narcissistic parent, what happens to them as they grow up and grow into adults? What happens to them? Well, there's a number of things that can happen. Of course, none of these are etched in stone. Getting them therapy now would be a great step towards alleviating some of those headaches as they get into adulthood. But you might see anxiety, you might see depression, you might see low self-esteem, you might see them turn to drugs or alcohol, other kinds of substance abuse to kind of like numb the pain that they're feeling with. They may have blamed themselves. Maybe if I was a better kid, mom or dad wouldn't have treated me that way. And that not only plummets their self-esteem, but makes them feel worthless. They might also be more prone to promiscuity. Like, for instance, let's say you have a daughter and your husband is the narcissist who treats your daughter this way. As she edges into her later teen years and into adulthood, she may become promiscuous, trying desperately to find the love from that father figure that she didn't get from her actual dad. She may turn to older men for that. And most likely, and no matter what the gender we're talking here, they're probably going to have really unhealthy relationships of a romantic nature as they get older, because they just don't have a good frame of reference. You may be as solid as a rock, but because of the damage done by this potentially narcissistic ex, they're going to really struggle to form healthy, long-lasting relationships. They're going to struggle to choose healthy people to begin with. And then they're likely going to do damage to the relationship, even if the other person is halfway healthy. It's just not a good way to go. They are going to need therapy. So starting them on that now would be a great thing to do to help alleviate some of those challenges that'll come for sure in their early adulthood and even well into their adult life. I know I didn't have a narcissistic parent, but I did have an alcoholic stepfather, and there were a lot of challenges that came into my life as a result of watching him, for instance, hit my mom and things like that. It damaged me in a number of ways that still affect my relationships today, and I'm obviously an older guy here. So the more you can do to protect your kids now and to help them through these challenging times now and to minimize the damage that your ex could do is gonna do nothing but help set them up for success in life in the years to come. I hope you found this video helpful. Again, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.